This mighty one is known under many names. He has no equal. There never was one like him. He is referred to in the Bible as God Almighty, and in some places as Jehovah, the God of gods, the Lord of lords. The Holy Quran refers to him as Allah, the one God. Besides him there is no God, and there is none like him. The Supreme Being, the Mighty, the Wise, the Best Knower, the Light, the Life Giver, the Mahdi. This is he whom I have met and am missioned by. He also is referred to as the Christ, the second Jesus, the Son of Man, who is wise and is all-powerful. He knows how to reproduce the universe and the people of his choice. He will remove and destroy the present, old, warring, wicked world of Yaqub, the Caucasian world, and set up a world of peace and righteousness out of this present so-called Negroes who are rejected and despised by this world. Mr. Yaqub was naturally born out of the 30% dissatisfied. As we know, wherever there is a longing or demand for a change, nature will produce that man who will bring it about. Allah taught me that the present percentage of this faction is 98%, near 100%, with the present ruling powers. This 100% dissatisfied will bring about a 100% change. Yaqub did not bring about a 100% change, but near 90%. Allah said, when Yaqub was 6 years old, one day he was sitting down playing with two pieces of steel. He noticed that the magnetic power in that steel attracting the other. He looked up at his uncle and said, "Uncle, when I get to be an old man, I am going to make a people who shall rule you." The uncle said, "What would you make?" "Something to make mischief and cause bloodshed in the land." Yaqub said, "Nevertheless, uncle, I know that which you do know not." And it was at this moment the boy Yaqub first came into the knowledge of just who he was, born to make trouble, break peace, kill, and to destroy his own people with a made enemy to the black nation. He learned his future from playing with steel. It is steel and more steel that his made race, the white race, are still playing with today. Steel has become the most powerful, useful of all metals for people. What he really saw in playing with the two pieces of steel was the magnetic power of attraction, the one attracting and the drawing the other under its power. In this, he saw an unlike human being made to attract others who could, with the knowledge of tricks and lies, rule the original black man until that nation could produce one later and capable of overcoming and making manifest his race of tricks and lies with the nation of truth. Yaqub was the founder of the unlike attracts and like repels. Though Mr. Yaqub was a member of the black nation, he began school at the age of 4. He had an unusual sized head. When he had grown up, the others referred to him as the big head scientist. At the age of 18, he had finished all of the colleges and university of his nation and was seen preaching on the streets of Mecca, making converts. He made such impressions on the people that many began following him. He learned from studying the germ of the black man under the microscope that there were two people in him and that one was black and the other was brown. He said if he could successfully separate one from the other, he could graft the brown into the germ of his last stage, which would be white. With his wisdom, he could make the white, which he discovered as the weaker of the black germ, rule the black nation for a time until a greater one was born than Yaqub. This new idea put him to work finding the necessary converts to begin grafting his new race of people. He began by teaching Islam with promises of luxury to those who would believe and follow him. As Mr. Yaqub continued to preach for converts, he told his people that he would make others work for them. This promise came to pass. Naturally, there are always some people around who would like to have others do their work. Those are the ones who fell for Mr. Yaqub's teaching 100%. As he made converts in the land and around the holy city of Mecca, persecutions set in. The authorities became afraid of such powerful teachings, with promises of luxury and making slaves of others. As they began making arrests of those who believed in the teaching, the officers would go back and find, to their surprise, others still teaching and believing it. Finally, they arrested Mr. Yaqub, but it only increased his teachings. They kept persecuting and arresting Yaqub's followers until they filled all the jails. The officers finally reported to the king that there was no room to put a prisoner in if arrested. All the jails are filled, and when we go out into the streets, we find them still preaching. What shall we do with them? The king questioned the officers on just what the teachings were and the name of the leader. The officer gave the king the answers to everything. The king said, "This is not the name of that man." On entering the prison, the king was shown Yaqub's cell. "Assalamu alaikum," the king said. "So you are Mr. Yaqub," he said. "Yes, I am," the king said. "Yaqub, I have come to see if we could work out some agreements that we will bring about an end to this trouble." "What would you suggest?" Mr. Yaqub told the king, "If you give me and my followers everything to start civilizations as you have, and furnish us with money and other necessities of life for 20 years, I will take my followers and we will go away from you." The king was pleased with the suggestions or conditions made by Yaqub and agreed to take care of them for 20 years until Yaqub's followers were able to go for themselves. After learning who Mr. Yaqub was, they were all afraid of him and were glad to make almost any agreement with him and his followers. The history or future of Mr. Yaqub and his people in the nation's book by the writers, 23 scientists of our history, 8,400 years before his birth. So the government began to make preparations for the exiting and exiling of Mr. Yaqub and his followers. The king ordered everyone rounded up who was a believer in Mr. Yaqub. They took him to the seaport and loaded them on ships. After rounding them up into ships, they numbered 59,999. Yaqub made 60,000. Their ships sailed out to an isle in the agency called Pelin. In the Bible, it is called Patmos. After they were loaded into the ships, Mr. Yaqub examined each of them to see if they were 100% with him and to see if they were all healthy and productive people. If not, he would throw them off. Some were found to be unfit, and overboard they went. When they arrived to the island, Mr. Yaqub said to them, "See how they, the holy people, have cast us out. Now, if you would choose me to be your king, I will teach you how to go back and rule them all." Of course, they had already chosen Yaqub to be their king, and at the very start, they went to work. So Yaqub chose doctors, ministers, nurses, and a cremator for his top laborers. He called these laborers together and told them his plan for making a new people who would rule for 6,000 years. He called the doctor first and said, "Doctor, let all of the people who come to you who want to marry, and if there come to you 2 real black ones, take a needle and get a little of their blood and go into your room and pretend to be examining it to see whether their blood would mix. Then come and tell them that they would each have to find another mate because their blood does not mix." It was the aim of Yaqub to get rid of the black, and he did. Give them a certificate to take to the minister, warning the minister against marrying the couple because their blood does not mix. When there comes to you 2 browner ones, take a pretended blood test of them, but give them a certificate saying they are eligible to marry. Mr. Yaqub's charge to take his laborers were very strict: death if one disobeyed. They did not know what Yaqub had in mind until they were giving their labor to do. He made his followers from the chief to the least liars. The doctor lied about the blood of the 2 black people who wanted to marry, that it did not mix. The brown and black could not be married, brown only. The doctors of today hold the same position over the people. You go to them to get a blood test to see that if you are fit to be married. Today they say it is done to see if there are any contagious germs in the blood. I wish that they would enforce such a law today to keep the white people from mixing with black. Just the opposite. Perhaps we could remain black and not be disgraced by a mixture of all colors. In the days of Yaqub's grafting of the present white race, a new and unlike race among the black people nation for 6,000 years, his law was that they should not allow the birth of a black baby in their family, but the white devil should mix their blood with the black nation in order to help destroy the black, but they should not allow the black nation to mix with their blood. His aim was to kill and destroy the black nation. He ordered the nurses to kill all black babies that were born against his people by prickling the brains with a sharp needle as soon as the black child head was out of the mother. If the mother is alert watching the nurse, then the nurse will lie and fool the mother to get possession of the child to murder it by saying she, mother, gave birth to an angel child and that she, the nurse, would like to take the baby to heaven. So when the mother dies, she would have a room with her child in heaven, for the baby was an angel. This is the beginning of the first lie or liar, and it was so that the nurse would take the black baby away on the falsehood and claim that they were taking the poor black baby to heaven. As Yaqub had taught them, they would feed the baby to a wild beast, and if they did not find a wild beast to feed the black babies to, Yaqub told the nurse to give it to the cremator to burn. Mr. Yaqub warned the laborers, from the doctors down to the cremator, that if any one of them failed to carry out their orders, off with their heads. When there was a little birth of a brown baby, the nurse would come and make much ado over it, and would tell the mother that she had given birth to a holy child, and that she would nurse it for 6 weeks, for her child was going to be a great man. That is when it was a boy. After the first 200 years, Mr. Yaqub had done away with the black babies, and all were brown. After another 200 years, he had all yellow or red, which was 400 years after being on that Pelin island. Another 200 years, which brings us to the 600th year, Mr. Yaqub had an all pale white race of people on his island. Of course, Mr. Yaqub lived about 150 years old, but his ideas continued in practice. He gave his people guidance in the form of literature, what they should do and how to do it, how to rule the black nation. He said to them, when you become and unlike the white race, you may return to the Holy Land and people from whom you were exiled. The Yaqub made devils who were really pale white with really blue eyes, which we think are the ugliest of colors for a human eye. They were all Caucasian, which means, according to some of the Arab scholars, one whose evil effect is not confined to oneself alone, but affects others. There was no good taught to them while on the island by the teachings of the nurses to kill the black baby and save the brown baby, so as to graft the white out of it. By lying to the black mother of the baby, the lie was born into the very nature of the white baby, and murder for the black people also born in them, or made by nature a liar and murderer. The black nation is only fooling themselves to take the Caucasian race otherwise. This is what Jesus learned of their history before he gave up his work of trying to convert the Jews, the white race, to the religion of Islam. And the same knowledge of them was given to Muhammad by the imams or scientists of Mecca. This is why the war of the Muslims against them came to a stop. Muhammad was told that he could not reform the devils, and that the race had 1,400 more years to live. The only way to make righteous people Muslims out of them was to graft them back into the original black nation. This grieved Muhammad so much that it caused him to have heart trouble until his death at age 62 and a half. The old scientists used to laugh at Muhammad for thinking that he could convert them, the devils, to Islam. This hurt his heart. Mr. Yaqub taught his maid devils on Pelin that when you go back to the holy black nation, rent a room in their homes. Teach your wives to go out to the next morning around the neighbors of the people and tell what you heard them talking about last night. When you have gotten them fighting and killing each other, then ask to let you help them settle their disputes and restore peace among them. If they agree, then you will be able to rule them both. This method of white race practices on the black nation the world over. They upset their peace by putting one against the other, and then rule after dividing them. This is the reason why the American so-called Negroes can never agree on unity among themselves, which will put them on top overnight. The devil keep them divided by paid informers from among themselves. They keep such fools among us, but the real truth of the devil sometimes converts the informants and brings them over to us as true believers. We don't bother about killing them, as I am not teaching that I want to be kept a secret, but that which the world has not known and you should know. After Yaqub's devils were among the holy people of Islam, the black nation, for 6 months, they had our people at war with each other. The holy people were unable to understand just why they could not get along with peace with each other until they took the matter to the king. The king told the holy people of the black nation that the trouble they were having was caused by the white race of devils in their midst, and that there would be no peace among them until we drove these white devils from among them. The holy people prepared to drive the devils out from among them. The king said, "Gather every one of you devils up and strip them of their costume. Put an apron on to hide their nakedness. Take all literature from them and take them away by a desert. Send a caravan armed with rifles to keep the devils westward. Don't allow one of them to turn back. And if they are lucky enough to get across the Arabian desert, let them go into the hills of West Asia, the place they now call Europe." Yaqub's made devils were driven out of paradise into the hills of West Asia, Europe, and stripped of everything but the language. They walked across the hot sandy desert into the land where long years of both trouble and joy awaited them, but they finally made it. Not all, many died in the desert. Once there, they were roped in to keep them out of the paradise, to make sure the Muslims who lived along the borders of the East and the West Asia were ordered to patrol the border to keep Yaqub's devil in West Asia, now called Europe, so that the original black nation men could live in peace, and that the devils could be alone to themselves, to do as they pleased, as long as they didn't try crossing the east border. The soldiers patrolled the border armed with swords to prevent the devils from crossing. This went on for 2,000 years. After that time, Moses was born, the man whom Allah would send to these exiled devils to bring them again into the light of civilization. Before we take up this first 2,000 years of the devil exiled on our planet, let us not lose sight of how they were made and the God of whom made them, Mr. Yaqub. Since we have learned that Mr. Yaqub was an original man, black, the ignorant of our people may say if Yaqub was a black man and the father of the devils, then he was a devil. That is like one saying the horse is as much as the mule, or that an orange or lemon is as much grapefruit as the grapefruit, because the grapefruit is grafted from the orange and lemon. They are not alike because the grafted is no longer original. Just what we have learned, or rather are learning from the divine revelation of our enemies, the devils? Answer: we're learning the truth which has been kept for a secret for 6,000 years concerning the white race who have deceived us. We learn what is meant by the Bible's symbolic teaching that they were made from dust. This only tends to convey that the idea were created from nothing, which means the low and humble origin of such creation. Again, we learn who the Bible in Genesis 1 verse 26 is referring in saying, "Let us make man." This us was the 59,999 black men and women, making or grafting them into the likeness or image of the original man. Not that they are the same, but they have the ways of a human being, and they are referred to as mankind and not the real original man, but being a made like the original man in the sense of human beings. The Holy Quran throws a great light on the truth of creation of this pale white race of devils. O mankind, surely we have created for you a male and female. This makes it very easy to understand to whom it is referring. What mankind? Surely we created man from sperm mixed with ovum to try him, so we have made him learning and seeing, inasmuch as these chapters, and that's in Surah 76 ayah 2, inasmuch as these chapters have a further reference to the spiritual creation of the last messenger, it is equally true that they refer to the physical creation of the white race. In another place, the Holy Quran says, "We have created man, and now he is an open disputer." Yaqub's race of devils were exiled in the hills and caves of West Asia, now called Europe. They were without anything to start civilization and became savages. They remained in such condition for 2,000 years, no guide or literature. They lost all knowledge of civilization. The Lord God of Islam told me that some of them tried to grab themselves back into the black nation, but they had nothing to go by. A few were lucky enough to make a start and got as far as what you call the gorilla. In fact, all of the monkey family are from this 2,000-year history of the white race in Europe. Being deprived of divine guidance for their disobedience, the making of their mischief, and causing bloodshed in the holy nation of the original black people by lies, they became so savage they lost all of their sense of shame. They started going nude as they are doing today and leading the so-called Negroes into the very acts. They became shameless. In the winter they wore animal skin clothes and grew hair all over their bodies and faces like the other wild animals. In those days they had made their homes in caves on hillside. There is a whole chapter devoted to them in the Holy Quran. They had it very hard, trying to save themselves from being destroyed by the wild beasts, which were plentiful at the time in Europe. Being without a guide, they started walking on their hands and feet like all animals, and learned to climb trees as well as any of the animals. At night they would climb up into trees carrying large stones and clubs to fight the wild beasts that would come prowling around at night to keep them from eating their families. Their next and best weapon were the dogs. They tamed some of these dogs to live in the caves with their families to help protect them from the wild beasts. After a time, the dog held a high place among the family because of his fearlessness to attack the enemies of his master. Today, the dog is still loved by the white race and is given more justice than the so-called Negro and is called the white man's best friend. This comes from the cave days. After 2,000 years of living as a savage, Allah raised up Moses to bring the white race again into civilization, to take their place as rulers as Yaqub had intended for them. Moses became their guard and leader. He brought them out of the caves, taught them to believe in Allah, taught them to wear clothes, how to cook their food and how to season it with salt, what beef they should kill and eat, and how to use fire for their service. Moses taught them against putting the female cow under burden. He established for them Friday as a day to eat fish and not to eat meat. And fish is the main menu on Fridays in many of the white homes today. They were so called evil that Moses had to build a ring of fire around him at night, and he would sleep in the center of that ring to keep the devils from harming him. They were afraid of fire and are still afraid of fire. Allah has said, one day Moses told them that he was going to have fish come up from the sea so that tomorrow we will have some fish. On the next day, the fish were there. Moses had a boat load sent up from Egypt. Moses said, "See, the sea came up last night and brought us some fish." One of the savages was a little smart, and he said to Moses, "Where is the water?" From then on, Moses recognized the fact that he could not say just anything to them. He had a hard time trying to civilize them. Once they gave Moses so much trouble that he took a few sticks of dynamite, went up on a mountainside, placed them into the ground, and went back to get those who were giving him the most trouble. He said to them, "Stand there on the edge of this mountain and you will hear the voice of God." They stood there about 300 in number. Moses set the fuse off and it killed all of them. The imams got after Moses for performing this trick on the devils. Moses said to the imams, "If you only knew how much trouble those devils give me, you would as I do." Moses taught the devils that if they would follow him and obey him, Allah would give them a place among the holy people. Most of them believed Moses just to get out of the caves. The imams recognized the tremendous job Moses had trying to civilize the savages. These enemies of the righteous black nation of earth now had to take a place as rulers and conquerors of the earth. The devils were giving knowledge and power to bring every living thing, regardless of its kind and life, into subjection. And God said, "Let us make man in our image and after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl over the air and over the cattle and all over the earth and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." And God said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it." Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 28. The above verse was all necessary if the devils were to rule as God of the world. They must conquer and bring into subjection all life upon the earth, not land life alone, but they must subdue the sea and the life therein, master everything until a greater master of God comes, which would mean the end of their power over the life of our earth. We all bear witness that the scripture quoted above refers to the Caucasian race. They are the only people who answer that description and work here for the past 4,000 years. They have subdued the people in most every kind of living thing upon the earth. God has blessed them to exercise all of their knowledge and blessed them with the guides from the prophets, our own people, and with the rain and seasons of the earth. Today their wealth is great upon the earth. Their sciences of worldly good have sent them not only after the wealth of other people than their own, but even after the lives of the prophets of their own kind. They have tried to re people, meaning replenish the earth with their own kind by skillfully killing off the black man and mixing their blood into the black woman. But the job is too big for them to ever conquer now. The black nation, including its other three colors, brown, red, and yellow, outnumbered the Caucasian 11-1. God created them in his image. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27. And they are in the image and the likeness of a human being, the black man, but are altogether a different kind of human being than that of the black human beings. Their pale white skin, their blue eyes, tells any black man or black woman that in those blue-green eyes, there just can't be any sincere love or friendship for them. They are unlike and we are like. Like repels, unlike attracts. They are characteristics of the black and white are so very different. Black people have a heart of gold, love and mercy. Such a heart nature did not give to the white race. This is where the so-called Negroes are deceived in this evil race. They think that they have the same kind of heart, but the white race knows better. They have kept it as a secret among themselves, and they may be able to deceive the black people. They have been and still are successful in deceiving the black man under the disguise of being the ones who want peace, love, and friendship with the world and with God, at the same time making war with the world to destroy peace, love, and friendship of the black nation. A brother loves and desires for his brothers what he desires for himself. So-called Negroes, do you have this kind of love and desire for the white race that tortures you? Why? Because if I have shown to you, they are not your brothers by nature. They are fully showing you this day openly that they are different from you and you are different from them. Why not try making a brotherly love and friendship with your own kind first? To see you trying to integrate with the very enemies of yours and God shows beyond a shadow of a doubt that you don't know yourself nor your enemies, or rather are lost and in love for our enemies. I know you who love your enemy. Don't like that I tell you this truth, but I can't help it. God has put it upon me and this mission, and I must do his will or burn. Are you with me to do the will of God or the will of the devil and the disbelieving people? I know who you are, for you have learned and are learning more truth than you ever have read and will ever read. Fear not, Allah is on our side to give you and me the kingdom.